Hello my friends and welcome back to the channel. Today what we're going to talk about is a really fun topic. We're going to talk about how to create your own email AI assistant that takes all of your incoming email in your primary box, let's say for Gmail, and creates a draft response to that email in the exact way that you would normally respond to that email based off of your priorities, your goals, and it's not just a generic thing. It is very customized to your own specific use case. And don't worry, it's not going to involve any sophisticated coding. We're going to be using a no-code tool called Zapier. And you're only going to need to know a little bit about prompt engineering, which I'll walk you through in the video. Let's get started. All right, so this here is exactly what you're going to have by the end of this video. I created this throwaway email account, so just to demo this process, where once you log in, you're going to have this exact same thing. You're going to be able to log in, you're going to see your new incoming private unread emails, and then there's going to be a draft reply to each of those emails when you log in. So all you have to do is you click, you're going to read the draft, and you're going to hit send, or maybe there's like a slight word or a slight tweak that you need to make to the email, and you're going to update it there, and then you're going to hit send when you like it. Again, this is very customized, so you're going to give it the exact instructions on how to respond to all the different types of emails. And that's the cool part, that it's actually customized to your specific use case. So for example, in this particular use case here, I told it, if any solicitation, just respond politely and say no, essentially. And it does. Why? Because instead of ignoring these people, I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of these cold emailers, and I've done cold email in the past as well, they'll assume that if you don't respond that you're still interested, and they're going to keep sending you emails. So it's better to just politely reject them and then never have to deal with them again. So that is what I instructed my bot to do, and that is what it did here very nicely. I'm not interested. Another example is here. Hey, want to be on my podcast? So I instructed it to ask about certain criteria about the podcast, right? Tell me about the audience of the podcast, subscribers, listeners, etc. And then once you hit send and the person responds again, it'll take the context of that whole email and it'll respond again with a follow-up message. So yeah, so let me show you exactly how to do that, because it's not as hard as you might think. And as you can see, it's extremely valuable to be able to just log into your email and have responses ready to go. All right, so let's get started with actually building this thing. If you don't know Zapier, Zapier is a really great tool. It's been around for a long time, and it basically allows for the API usage of different apps so that they can talk to each other. Essentially, that's what it is. So instead of you building your own tools from complete scratch, having to code everything yourself, pulling from this API and talking to another API, etc., Zapier makes that very easy, because they've already pre-built the interactions with the APIs, so that it's essentially like putting Lego blocks together and building something on your own. So in Zapier, there are triggers and there are actions. So a trigger is exactly what it sounds like. It's an event that starts your Zap, and an action is an event a Zap performs after it starts. Just to map this out in a way where you can imagine what happens here. The trigger will be when a new email that fits certain criteria is received. And the action will be a few actions actually, and you'll see what I mean by a few actions, because this will be a multi-step Zap. It's not the easiest, quickest Zap where one thing happens and only one other thing happens as a result of that one thing happening. It's actually a little bit more involved than that, but it's only 4 steps, and I'll show you those steps right now. So the trigger is, like we mentioned, we're going to receive an email. In this case, we'll use Gmail, and we'll choose an event. We'll say new email. And if you've never played with Zapier, it's really fun to be able to see what all the triggers are and what all the actions are for different apps, because then your imagination starts to flow and you'll be able to see how all these things interact and what the possibilities are, which is really cool. But in this case, we'll stick to the AI bot for email. Once you go here, you go to continue, then you basically choose your email from here. You click on change and then you choose your email. I'll choose again this throwaway email that I've been using. So continue. So depending on how you have your email set up, you could just do category personal, And you could see here that personal and primary can be used interchangeably, but just to make sure that it doesn't go into other buckets here, I'm going to add a little bit more customization. But so we click on, so let's just say personal, continue. And then you can hit test trigger. So when you hit test trigger, it'll start to pull data based off of that trigger, so that you can start to see what it pulled in and what it didn't pull in based off of the criteria that you gave it. And then from there, you could start to see if it works or not. So I see here that it pulled the right emails. It pulled the, do you want to buy my stuff? It pulled the, you want to be on my podcast? So I'm good here. I don't have to worry about it. And I know that because it didn't pull any other information here from like other different types of accounts. So I'm good there. But for you, in your case, you may have to play around with these specific settings here based off of how you have your Gmail set up or your other email solution set up, whatever you use. Okay, so yeah, just play around with it. It's totally worth it to get this right. All right, so in this next step, what we're doing is we're pulling another step, basically a filtering step, to make sure that, again, the right emails are being pulled, because we don't want the AI to generate responses for the wrong email. And depending on how you have your email set up, again, you might have to play around with this. But for me, what works really well is to add this step. So basically how you add this step is that you would click on here, choose a field, and the field that we're looking at here are labels. And then we're going to choose a condition. The label contains, and we'll say it contains the word important. So we only pull in those emails that are labeled important. And the labels, let's do another, contains inbox. Whoops, contains inbox. Continue. Important and inbox are just two labels that I find typically pull in the right emails. So we can retest this again just to see what emails are pulled in. And 912, important category, your Zap would have continued for this test data. Yeah, so it says that the test data that is flowing through right now, this fits the criteria. So we're good so far. Again, this is not the most fun part of this video, but now we're about to jump into the very fun part. All right, so we have our two steps. We have our email trigger and our action, which is, it's not really an action, it's like a filtering process. We're finally going to add ChatGPT here. So I'm assuming you have ChatGPT if you're watching a video about AI. So I'm not going to go too deeply into how to create your own ChatGPT account. But what you might need to set this up, to finalize the setup of this, is an API, an OpenAI API key. And it's really easy to set up. Let me jump into the account and show you. So you're going to Google OpenAI API, and you're going to click through until you get to this screen. Here, you're going to click on here, and you're going to go to view API keys. And then you're going to create a new secret key, and you're going to copy that key, and you're going to input it into ChatGPT inside of Zapier. If you don't know how this works, basically you get access to the API. The API is your ability to use OpenAI's models like GPT 3.5 and GPT 4 for a very small cost. Okay, the billing is very minimal. You'll be surprised how cheap it is to use GPT 3.5 Turbo, for example. And yeah, so if you want to dig deeper into that, you can research it, but trust me when I say it's super cheap. All right, so once you've set it up here, you're going to be prompted with giving specific instructions about the action, right? So user message. So this would be like the message that you type into ChatGPT. Okay, so if you tell ChatGPT, hey, write me an email, this is where you would type it. So you could say now something like, please draft an email for Andre and do not include a subject line. Well, to be specific, please draft a response email as Andre and do not include a subject line. And here is the email to respond to. Okay, so now you have to give it the variable of the content from the input email that we're passing along here. Okay, so let me show you what that means exactly. So insert data. So there's an option here to insert data, right? So all you would have to do is insert the data from the body of that email that you're pushing along, right? So there you go. So every time a new email is going to come in, it's going to read that body and it's going to pass it along, assuming it meets all that filtering criteria here, and then it's going to create that draft. But we're not done because nothing's customized yet. This is just very generic, right? So let's keep moving. Here's where we pick the model. I think GPT-4 is a very popular model out there because it's one of the most advanced. But personally, I think it's a little bit overkill for this purpose. So we can just leave it at the way cheaper GPT 3.5 Turbo here. So we'll leave that. A memory key, you can insert some memory. Again, it's outside the scope of this particular video, but you just know that you can give it some sort of memory, which is really cool. User assistant, that's fine. Okay, so here is the fun part where you can say, you can give it an identity. Okay, so this is the assistant instructions. So this is the part where you might have to iterate over and over in order to get it just right. And you will also need to know a little bit about prompt engineering and how to make the AI do what you want. Okay, however, you'd be surprised at how a first go around, how great it could be and it could look like. Okay, so let me show you what a generic thing to put in here, and you can keep specifying it and tweaking it as you go. And as you see the different replies that it generates, you will always want to come back here and input this specific and tweak and optimize this specific message here. Okay, what I would do is something like, you are a helpful, let's say you are an assistant to Andre who responds to all of his emails in a professional, courteous, and empathetic way. And you could give it whatever qualities you want here. You can, if you want to be like this direct, hard-nosed CEO type person that just tells everyone to go and touch grass and take a hike, then by all means, give it that type of personality and it'll draft those type of emails. But for me, this is like what resonates with me. So let's continue. I would also say your job is to protect Andre's time and identify opportunities that you feel would be beneficial for his business goals. Here are the rules that you must follow. And this part is where you could give it whatever specific orders and give it different types of emails and how to respond to those specific emails that you want. So for me, the easiest ones, the one I start out with is spam and solicitation, right? If you detect an email that is spam or solicitation, please kindly reject their offer and request they don't email you again about it. Okay. The next one could be, as you saw in the beginning of the video when I showed you the podcast and all that, right? This is an example that is very common. So you could say something like, if you are asked to go on a podcast or join someone else's platform or produce content for someone else's platform, please do not agree to participate unless you've clarified the following things. A, the audience of that platform is business owners, right? So let's say your niche in your business is business owners. You want to clarify that. The audience is not very small. You could be more specific here, but I'll let the AI determine what small is. And if it doesn't respond in a way that I want it to respond, I'll go back in here and be a little bit more specific. And then I'll say here, if you've determined that this would be a good opportunity for Andre, then send over Andre's calendar for the person to book a call and discuss it further. Here is the link for his calendar. Okay, and then you could use your whatever calendar. Let's just say that's your Calendly link, and the AI will actually send that. It'll follow these instructions. So it'll go through the emails and it'll determine, okay, cool, it fits these criteria. Here's a link to my calendar so we can discuss it further. And then, yeah, you can keep going, right? For example, what else here? You could say, if the client, if it is a refund request, please have them fill out this form to get a refund, right? Google Forms. I forgot the specific URL for Google Forms, but let's say you have a Google form where if somebody's emailing you for a refund, they need to fill out that form in order to get the refund and request it. Then the AI would look at the message. Oh, they're requesting a refund. Okay, here's the form. All right. So again, you can fill in your own use cases here. There are some things that I always recommend doing. So adding like a do not section here. So do not be rude or impatient. Always be polite. Make sure to always be polite. 2, what else? Be too verbose in your responses. Try to be concise and professional. Concise and professional. And yeah, for now, we'll just leave it at this. And then once you can continue. And the max tokens is basically here, how many tokens, how much you're going to allocate to ChatGPT's API to be able to keep running these queries. If you find that your emails are going really long and it's necessary, you might want to increase this number. But I find that 250 could be enough for a lot of things. So temperature 1 is basically how creative you want the AI to be, anywhere from 0 to 2. So 1 is like average creativity. If you want it to be very scientific, very to the point, you want it to have no artistic license whatsoever, then you could even put it at 0. And you can have this very robotic, very specific AI response. If you want it to be kooky and crazy and a little bit more on the creative side, you can test it too and just see what type of responses that generates, okay? Very similar. Top P is very similar. I would only mess with temperature or top P, probably not both, but you can play around with it and look them up if you really are curious about this. And then continue. Okay, so now once you click continue, you can test the response. So you can give it so you know that email we've been pulling along, the one that says want to be on my podcast? Now we can test this step, okay? So let me show you what that looks like. All right, then you'll hit the test button and then you'll get a response, and then you're going to determine if that response fits the type of assistant that you want, right? So for example, the original email that we were pulling along here was the want to be on my podcast email. From the very beginning, from that trigger, we were pulling along the want to be on my podcast. And this is the response right here. So it says, thank you for reaching out and considering me as a potential guest. I appreciate your opportunity. To ensure alignment with my business goals, I have a few specific criteria for podcast appearances. First, automatically what I'm noticing here for this specific version of the prompts that we gave it and the system message is that this one feels a little bit more robotic, not so concise. So I would adjust the system message here. So let's go back to action here. So I would say something like professional, courteous, empathetic way. So always think win. B, use a slightly more casual tone as well and try not to sound too corporate. Okay. I also saw that it sent my calendar really in that first email. Here's a link to his calendar. So I will put a do not here. So do not send a link to his calendar until all of the criteria is met for appearing on the podcast or platform. Okay, so now let's hit continue. And let's retest this step and see how our response is updated. All right, so let's look at the response. Hi there, thank you so much for reaching out and considering me for your podcast. I appreciate the opportunity and would love to learn more about it. Can you please share some details about your podcast, such as the topic, target audience, and estimated number of listeners? Once I have a better understanding of your podcast, I can determine if it aligns with my business goals and if it would be a good fit for me to participate. Looking forward to hearing from you soon. Best regards, Andre. All right, so this is way closer to what I envision. Personally, I don't like the part where it says once I can determine if it aligns with my business goals. So me being like a perfectionist, I'll probably still try to optimize it so that it doesn't talk in a way where it seems a little bit more self-centered, right? Like their main focus is my business goals. Although this is still a very natural response that I don't think anybody would get offended by, especially if they're the ones that are reaching out trying to get you on their platform. But yeah, like I still would apply some tweaking here, but you can see how powerful this is. All right, so now that we're done with this step and we're reasonably happy with the output here, we can go to the final step, which is create a draft. Okay, so we would go to add a step here, go back to Gmail, choose an event, create draft reply specifically. And then you can play around here and see everything that's possible. You could also, once the AI gets so good that you're happy with every single reply that it gives you, or the type of reply that it gives you, you can just, I don't recommend this necessarily, unless maybe it's a specific email that you don't really, it's not your personal email and you don't care what happens, but you could set it up so that it sends the email directly without you having to review it. But I personally don't recommend that yet, especially when you first set this up. All right, so you go to create draft reply in Gmail, and then you go to thread here because you have to set all this up, and the asterisk is something that's required. So this is slightly technical, but not really, but you go to custom, you go to ID, and that's it. It's basically, whoops, you just want one here. It's basically Gmail's way of identifying which thread you're replying to in your Gmail. You're pulling that ID from that trigger email, and that's what that is. So anyway, everything here is good, right? If you want, you can specify the email that you're responding with, but I don't think you have to here. There's no asterisk. And then here is the important part, because you obviously have to specify the body that you are responding with, right? And that's going to come from ChatGPT, because ChatGPT was what generated the response. So we click on ChatGPT, conversation with ChatGPT, and here it is, reply, boom. That's it. So that's the body. And then you could add a signature if you want, label, attachment, whatever. All that is possible, which is really cool. And then you click continue. Hi there, blah, blah, blah. And then you can test the step here. So you click on test step, you click on that. So now you retest the step, and then you'll be able to see all the drafts here after maybe a few seconds. And you would have to, if you don't see it, you would reload. And here you can see Want to Be on My Podcast has 4 drafts because we tested it a couple times. So yep, that's it. Your very own AI assistant. Don't forget to turn it on. And you may have to pay for a Zapier account if you don't have a grandfathered multi-step account, but it's really worth it if you get a lot of email. You also have to pay for the API that you're using with OpenAI for ChatGPT. But again, ChatGPT 3.5 is very cheap. So just set that up one time on their website, create like a credit card and do whatever you need to do there. And then you'll have access to it forever. I hope this helps and that you could see what's possible. This is just the beginning. So you can connect a ton of apps to a lot of different things and leverage AI, specifically in this case, OpenAI, to do a lot of this great automation work for you, so that all you have to do is just log in and there'd be these amazing replies already ready for you to go. Just all you got to do is just review them and then hit send. And if you don't like those replies, you go back and you edit the original instructions, and that's it. You can continue to iterate that until you have the perfect bot that'll save you hours and hours of your life. Hope that helps. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments, because this process can get a little messy if maybe you've never worked with any of these tools before, but it's pretty straightforward. And also, if there's a calendar in my description, you can also have my team assist with setting some of the stuff up for you, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many more ways you can automate your life and just free yourself up to do the things that you really love instead of the minutia and the boring day-to-day stuff that is very soul-sucking and uninspiring. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for spending the time. Feel free to this video and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.